And welcome to Athlantic, the show where an American and a Brit take turns crossing the pond to learn about sport culture in the UK and the USA, in-person edition. I'm Adam Jordan, your resident American.
And I'm Harry Collins, your resident Brit. 14 episodes, 9.5 months?
Yep.
And as you said, this is the first time we've done this in the same room.
Yeah.
The distance between us is 4.5 inches instead of the 3,990 miles it normally is. Adam, you've been in the UK for about a week.
Yeah.
Got a couple days left to go.
Yep.
Yeah. Hello.
Seeing you in person is still
hello.
like seeing you in like 3D is still like kind of like I'm still getting used to it. But yeah, no, we've done a lot here in the past in the past week or so. We've been on a road trip. We've been doing all sorts of stuff, obviously with a big sports bent to it. But the top thing on my mind really since we did it has been our wonderful trip to Sussex by the Sea, going to the American Express Community Stadium to watch West Ham and Brighton in an actually incredible game, which we got very lucky on.
Now, again, we've said, even though, as we'll come back to later on, we've got like a podcast team that we follow. We are not. This is not a podcast about Brighton. It's not a podcast about any of the Pittsburgh teams that you follow as passionately as I do. But yeah, this was a great opportunity. You wanted to come and see a match at the Amex. Also, that's the home stadium of my team that I've watched growing up. That's a special place for me. And you like really nicely. You wanted to share that with me and my dad. Thank you, Dad, for making it happen. But yeah, I've probably been there 100 times. I remember vividly my first time, and it was in a far different setting, sort of sporting-wise, than yours. So, what did you think? What were you sort of surprised at, both sort of positively, or maybe anything that you were disappointed in? Yeah, other than the middle 80 minutes of the game were pretty disappointing. But yeah, let us know.
Yeah, we scored early, and then obviously, if you go back and watch it, it's incredible. Scored late twice to take it from the death. I came into this excited. It's not my first Premier League game. It's
not even your first Brighton game.
Not my first Brighton. My first Premier League game actually was like one of the first. I guess it was within the first 5 years of Brighton being up. It was at Stamford Bridge, and Brighton happened to be the away team that day. But anyway, wasn't my first time. I'd also been to QPR in the Championship. That was like 6 years ago.
At Loftus Road?
Yeah, Loftus Road, whatever it's called now.
Stadium,
Yeah, but then it was called Loftus Road. But anyway, this was the first time that I actually had been to a match, and actually like felt like I belonged, because like I actually support the team.
You had stakes in it.
I had stake in it. I was with people that were equally passionate about it, and we were surrounded by great people. I knew the songs. I knew it was really a lot of fun.
Adam did his homework. Adam knew all the lyrics to our opening salvo. Yeah. Brighton has we have an anthem that we sing at the beginning. Adam knew every word better than I did.
I was very proud of myself. But yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say so to get back to your other question, it was, I think it was notable to me that it didn't actually feel all that different from other games. And again, I kind of knew what to expect, but just my feeling as a fan, as a supporter, was
When you say other games, do you mean the other games that you saw in the UK?
I mean games in the UK.
All right,
but also not super dissimilar from environments in the UK. Obviously, the environment, the atmosphere is different, but at the end of the day, we were talking about this somewhat in the car. There's there's an element of you were going to this game with your dad at the end of the day. There were people around us that were with family, with friends. It's just, a normal thing out. It's just, the difference in how people are going to support their team. There's a difference in, people are going to sing, people are going to, kind of speak in certain cadences, say certain things. But otherwise, I mean, same as it's a universal language, language of sports.
Also, and while I'm actually quite pleased with what you saw. If I had to write a script for a match for you to get like the full the full spectrum of being at a Premier League game for a team that aren't going to win the league, which is an accessible, I think, and easily related to experience across all sports. I couldn't have written a better script than, we score first, good goal, come behind, and then come back in the last couple of minutes, because the whole game I felt, and I'm going to use this word, I felt a little bit embarrassed that we had quite a poor atmosphere.
Yeah.
But your first one, we were quiet. You came to a game at a point in the season where I think a lot of fans were a little bit disappointed with some recent results. So actually, it was a pretty authentic, not everyone was singing all the time. And then in the last 10 minutes, I think the atmosphere went off like a rocket.
Yeah.
And you get people screaming. The songs are coming out. The celebrations, both for West Ham, to be fair, when they scored what they thought was the winner, and then our equalizer and our winner, the actual winner, was amazing. And that's, I was really pleased that you got the disappointment for an hour of oh my God, we're going to throw this away.
At one point you turned to me and you were like, well, I never said this was going to be fun. This is an authentic experience.
And very rarely is the game fun all the way through.
Right.
And if you support Man City, you've probably had 4 years of it being fun all the way through.
Yeah, true.
But I was really pleased that you got this spectrum high and low. Off the pitch, what did you think?
So two things. One, I do want to touch quickly on relating back to our recent episode on away days. I did notice that West Ham's supporters, even though that team has been through the ringer this year, they were as loud as any away section that I've seen at anything in America. Definitely, probably louder, at least by comparison. I do totally agree with your point that at the beginning it was very, it probably felt a lot like a UNC football game when we're in our kind of our middle self. Obviously, we'll see what happens with Belichick. Not the point. Off the pitch, I think the biggest thing that I noticed was the Brighton foray into a somewhat American match day experience.
Yeah.
You were excited. I think when we talked about this trip early on, you talked about a couple pubs that we were going to go to, kind of the places we'd go to before and after the match. And then Brighton opened up the terrace, literally, I think 2 or 3 weeks before I came here, before we went to the game. And, the terrace is this new section that's basically, a pre-game outside the stadium, pre-match. There's food vendors, there's beer, there's the vendors have the backpacks with lager. Very funny. But anyway, and, TV screens to watch the games before. We watched Chelsea-Everton beforehand. And it was that's very akin to some of the pre-match hospitality that you'll see at American sporting venues, albeit on a very pared down level.
I was surprised. We knew that it was coming. I've been seeing it. I've seen it being built for the last couple of times I've been to the Amex. And we knew what it was going to be ahead of time. But I was really surprised that, number one, they've really pulled it off really nicely.
Yeah, it was very good.
It's a food court and a bar.
Yeah.
It's got space for thousands of people. It's covered. It is absolutely designed, and it executes on its mission to make to drag the supporters' experience at the stadium as long as possible, which is going to be a key theme of what we're talking about for the rest of today's episode, which is sort of the difference between the British and American models of sport, where one of them is all about maximizing profits and one of them is all about utility maximization.
Yep.
And then obviously we're in this weird place in 2025, and as we keep developing, where the profit and the utility maximization are starting to blend a little bit.
Yeah.
And actually the terrace is a really good specific example of how teams in the UK are, and I'm sure around the rest of Europe, are starting to realize, there's way more money that is untapped here. And it's an interesting balance to strike, where you're we want to, as I said, I wanted to take you to the pub that we would normally go to before the game. But we were actually, this is more convenient. Hey, well done, Brighton. You made it more convenient. It wasn't that much more expensive. You're already at the ground. You don't have to worry about things. That money's going to be spent in the city of Brighton anyway. What Brighton have effectively done is pulled people out of those pubs and brought them here. Now, there's a whole conversation about whether or not that's good for the town and how like the club's relationship with the town, but it is very illustrative that we are moving towards profit maximization in the Premier League, which is what we'll talk about a little bit later on. But beyond the match, you've been in the UK for 6 other days. As you said, we did our debut Athlantic road trip, which we hope would be a maybe an annual or a biannual thing.
Hopefully we can do more.
Where else has sport intersected with your week?
Yeah, it's been a lot. We went to Cornwall this week, as you'll see or maybe have seen, depending on when all of this gets released. But we did a lot of pitch and putt. We did some mini golf, crazy golf, and we did karting. So I took Harry go-karting the last time he was in America. And we were at a little beach town in North Carolina, Ocean Isle Beach. And it was like your standard American, standard just kind of like, I don't even know if it's an American thing or if it's just kind of like just a little fun fair kind of standard, but they were basically glorified lawnmowers, and that's basically all I've driven my entire life whenever I've been karting. And you took me to like actual karting, which does exist in the US, obviously, but that was a whole was not ill prepared, but I was just like, that blew my mind with the speed of that and the intensity. It was very cool.
As we discussed in the NASCAR episode ages ago now. There's a gulf in difference in European motorsport culture and American motorsport culture, and one of those, it seems, as you said, go-karting is accessible in the US, but you hadn't done it before. I think in the UK, because go-karting can be so compact, you get it. There's sort of 1 or 2 in every town, and in London there are 3 or 4, and we've got a good one just down the road, literally from where we are now. So I did it quite a lot as a kid. I always wanted to be a racing driver, and then I realized I don't have the money or the talent to do so. But when we did it in Ocean Isle Beach, I kind of had to hide my disappointment because walking pace would have been quicker. But
it was that was very different.
Bringing you to quite unquote a real go-kart track with like speed
and like people that were actually like, there were like people there that were racing with or racing just after us that were like actually practicing and like trying to get like good times.
We were both humbled by children, as is supposed to be.
I will say my fastest lap was only like 0.4 off of Harry, so for a first time I'm very proud of that,
and it'll be the last time because I can't handle that rate of exponential improvement.
Yeah, fair. So want to keep moving through this because I want to make sure that we leave plenty of time for the main body of our episode, but couple of other things. We saw a lot of grassroots sport, which is something that I think both of us love to see whenever we're in each other's countries, just kind of seeing how people, like everyday people, kids within a country, what their everyday relationship with sport is outside of watching it, consuming it, taking it in, how they're actually playing it. So actually, like right after I got off the plane, we went on a little walk in Wandsworth Common. And we saw a big field and some lines painted on it. And I said, confusedly, that looks like a baseball field. And you said, no, my boy, that is Rounders.
It is,
So got to see what that looks like, or at least the outline of it. So. Saw that. We saw lawn bowling down in Cornwall. We saw plenty of rugby, obviously a zillion different football pitches. Saw a lot of cricket grounds. Not a lot of people playing cricket right now, not quite yet, even though the weather is starting to get to cricket weather.
Like the first trainings for like our county teams, maybe the first fixtures have just kicked off.
Yeah, sure.
Like literally last weekend. We couldn't squeeze it in, fine.
Yeah. But yeah, so we saw a lot of that. We saw on kind of the way down, we've saw like 4 different proper stadiums, obviously including the Amex. We drove by Sandy Park, home of the Exeter Chiefs, I think is who they are for rugby. We went to Home Park for in Plymouth for Plymouth Argyle, RIP, their championship season. Truro City on the other end, going up to the National League, which is incredibly exciting for them. Probably not whoever's organizing their travel. And then yesterday we went to Oxford. And we saw Oxford United's ground.
In the space of a week, seeing a Premier League football ground and then a 6th tier.
Yep.
Football stadium.
Yeah, very different.
Voted about a couple of days. Really good. Truro City, I think, holds maybe a couple of thousand. The Amex holds 30,000 more than that.
Yep.
You've seen a good breadth,
good range, yeah,
of sports facility.
Apparently we're supposed to make fun of Oxford United for not having a fourth end.
Bless it. I don't want to add to that, but yeah, it's as a casual Oxford United fan who went to the Kassam as a kid with friends.
That's the name of the
that's the name of the stadium. We would always get ribbed on because it's got three massive tiers and then nothing, just a car park behind behind one of the ends. So it does look unfinished, except the rest of the ground looks like it was finished in the 80s. So any attempt to put something in there would look silly. However, I'm pretty sure they've got a new stadium on the way anyway.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So we'll buy the Kassam. We'll put a link below and we'll fill in that fourth tier.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, good. But yeah, other than that, a lot of stuff to get to as we dive into that. But a lot of things going on back home as well.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to keep an eye while sort of your attention was on, obviously, me, sport in England.
Yeah,
but back home, you've had a week.
We have, and also, actually, I apologize. I do have to go back for a second because I will say there was one more grassroots sport that we did see when we walked into the Amex, and also when we were playing pitch and putt at in Plymouth in the park. We saw multiple kids playing American football.
Absolutely no right to go to a Premier League football stadium and see three games
happening at the same time.
Flag football, clearly different ages. 7. I'm pretty sure both boys and girls.
Yep.
The referees still dressed like Foot Locker employees. Taking it seriously. It was like 5 aside.
It's the other way around.
Just the skill positions.
It's just the skill positions. Yeah, and it was it looked like a sport. It looked like a country that is learning how to play a new sport. But
you said the NFL are pushing.
The NFL are absolutely pushing that internationally. They're pushing it domestically too. Yeah. Obviously, it's going to be in the Olympics in 2028. Yeah, cool. So next time, when you come for the Olympics in LA in 2028, there'll be flag football. So, so that was interesting. But to get back to the next point, what's going on back home? I have been able to keep a little eye on. I can't look away from hockey for too long, from ice hockey for too long, and the Stanley Cup, because the Stanley Cup playoffs are just the greatest spectacle I want to say they're the greatest playoffs in North American professional sports. I want to be as muted as I can on that, but it's hard for me to contain my excitement. As of right now, we're just finishing up the first round. There's one team, the Carolina Hurricanes, who actually have already gotten through as of this recording, and then most of the other games or other series are in at least Game 5. I think all of them are at least Game 5 at this point. So, of 7.
Episode 3 or 4 of the Athlantic podcast, we picked a team that we were going to follow this season, and then
so we've done a great job.
But now is as good a time as any to say the Ottawa Senators are not. They're not dead and buried yet.
No, they are again, first playoff berth since 2017, and they went down early in the series. They went down 3-0 in the series to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Heavily favored were the Leafs, but they've won 2 in a row here, and I think they play tonight or tomorrow. But anyway, not to get too current because this will air far after you all know what's happened to the Senators and Leafs. But yeah, so that's going on. The NBA playoffs are underway. The first round is also kind of they tend to follow each other, the NBA and the NHL playoffs. So we're kind of in the thick of that, and then probably, just as big as any of those was something off the field, which was the NFL draft happened last week. All 3 rounds happened on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the 24th, 25th, 26th, I think. And it was a big spectacle hosted in Green Bay. The NFL continues to push it as kind of its own standalone event.
Sure.
Outside of it
moves city to city.
It moves city to city. It did not used to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, was it always in?
It was always, I think it was always in New York. And it used to, at the very beginning, it was basically, I think it was in the league offices, or it was in a central place where it was just kind of a room with phones and team executives.
I was watching Jerry Maguire last night, and a part of that is them being in New York as he's like trying to get his first round pick like chosen.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, so that's what but now it has become a whole spectacle. They sell tickets. They try to get as many. Yeah, they sell tickets to it. There's it's at the very least, I don't know if they're charging for it. I would imagine they are. I would be shocked if they weren't. I haven't looked because I've never been in a city where it's actively taking place, but like there's fans there I'm
going to put the NFL draft in that very specific column of exciting. And also in this column is Eurovision, the FA Cup, the FA Cup draw. It's quite compelling, albeit not for like multiple days. But like I imagine watching the first round and seeing where like your hottest prospects are going. I like watching who's going to pick up points from Greece. In Eurovision, you know exactly what I mean. When things are like weirdly compelling.
Yeah, Eurovision is weirdly compelling.
Yeah, I don't care about the music at Eurovision.
Sure,
albeit I'd like to win, and I like ABBA. But it's the bit when they get to like, hey, we're going to distribute all the points now.
Yeah,
I can't turn away.
Sure,
it's in like a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I've only watched it once. It was actually the last time I was here,
and it was really compelling.
And I was very confused, but it was compelling.
You don't care, and suddenly you're like,
okay,
go. It's genuinely so. Yeah, the draft.
Well, this has been Eurovision Minute.
Yeah. We'll do this once a week.
Okay.
So sorry,
but yeah, the draft. No, the draft is compelling, and it's become a big spectacle. But anyway, like this reshapes, the hopes and dreams of teams in the NFL. It will happen after the playoffs are over with the NBA, with the NHL. It happened with the WNBA about a month ago, or earlier this month, actually. So Major League Baseball, it'll happen later this summer. So like it's obviously a key feature of American sports.
I always think the timing of the draft, because I'm aware of when the NFL season runs, and the Super Bowl's always in the first couple of weeks of February. I'm always conscious of like, okay, it's football time.
Yep.
And then the football time ends in February, and I'm like, cool, I don't have to think about football until, because like the thing about football as an English person is a lot. Like there's a whole lot going on, and we're just specifically talking about the NFL. And then like here it comes around in April. I'm like, oh, so you've got to quickly care about football again.
Yeah.
And like you research all of your college boys.
Yeah.
You see where like Ashton Janty's going to go.
You asked me this morning. You were like, hey, we got Will Howard. Is he any good? And
yeah. I'm like, yeah.
You're like your football brain has to turn back on.
Yeah. You immediately have to Google people and like consume their entire Wikipedia to know like what, again, as an English person, we just don't get to watch them all as much as I'd like to. With that said, are there any big narratives from the draft this year that are at all compelling?
I mean, I didn't watch it live, obviously. I did gain a great appreciation for your ability to follow American sports. It is way easier for me to follow sports over here. The fact that these things come on at like midnight, I don't know how you do it. I love morning sports, so being able to watch like the Premier League in the morning, watching Brighton play in the morning is
I'm tired.
Amazing.
I'm always tired.
Yeah,
that's why I look 30 years older than you.
Exactly. Yeah, we forgot to do your makeup before.
I know.
But no, I would say the biggest narrative was probably Shedeur Sanders, just the quarterback who played for Colorado, coached by his dad, legend of the NHL, Deion Sanders, was expected to be taken potentially in the first round, but at least in the second round, fell all the way to the fifth round. People have a lot of theories about that. He didn't interview well with teams, it sounds like, but not to get too in the weeds on that. That was probably the biggest narrative of the draft. But yeah, next year it's going to be in Pittsburgh, so that'll be
sure. And they like they handed off.
Yeah, they handed. That was weird. I've never seen that before. Yeah, that was like they were trying to do like the Olympics thing.
Yeah,
it was weird.
Well, obviously, we love the Olympics. The worst part of the Olympics is the end of the closing ceremony, where the identity of the identity of the Paris Olympics was then absolutely squashed I'm saying this. We haven't discussed this. It's completely squashed by Tom Cruise and like the LA
Hard disagree.
No, because we did it as well when we sent Beckham over to Beijing.
Yeah.
I like that it progresses on. I think it's like a little abrupt. It's a little thank you, bye. Now, obviously, we're not going to change it.
I couldn't disagree more with you.
But you know, just let them like enjoy their moment. Let it like go through.
2 weeks.
I found it true. They do have 2
They've
weeks.
had 4 years.
And then, of course, like the Paralympics truck straight on through. So it's not like we're not looking at Paris for the next 2 weeks. But like, I was just like, oh my God, they really sent the world's biggest movie star to go and steal the Olympics. Like, it's like, hey, spotlight on us. Which again, it's always been the case. I would just like, you know, I don't even know what I'm like aiming at here. But this is the first thing that we'll like disagree on camera. I don't like that. I would stop that.
Okay.
I would let the holding country decide how they give it over. That would have been hilarious.
That would be funny.
If Beijing handed it to Britain on like a plate with fish and chips on it, it's funny.
That would be.
Yeah, be like, this is our legacy.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually do appreciate that, but I do love the formal passing it on with the Olympics.
Sure.
I think it's weird that they did it with the draft, but you know what?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
To each their own. But so the draft is obviously again, as we've talked about, key feature in kind of just the overall structure of American sports, which is half of our big topic today. So today we really wanted to talk about, kind of do a little bit of a reset here now that we're together and have been able to, actually realize that, hey, this is, we've gotten through this to the point where, we're not starting anymore, even though we'll probably look back on this in 40 episodes and be like, oh my God, what were those guys doing?
Yeah, how did he forget his makeup again?
Yeah, exactly. But we think now is as good a time as any to kind of take a step back and look fundamentally at really what this whole show is about, which is comparing the American and European, but really British sporting systems, obviously, and the culture as well. That's a big part of it. But so you brought this up as kind of a good idea to do at this point. So I'd love you to kind of kick this off for us.
So in an ideal world, this would have been the very first Athlantic episode.
Yes.
Because this is what frames all of the other discussion that we've had about the differences in our countries, because we have to talk about the FA Cup as belonging to to a sport in a country that uses an open league format. Mm-hmm. We talk about college football. College football and college sport is a critical component of a closed league format that you have in the US. Mm-hmm. For, the draft, which, we will continue to talk about throughout this episode, is a mechanism that is unique to closed league competition for a very good reason. So there is this fundamental difference between what we will call British and American, or English and American sports structures, but it really extends to European, and it's quite, you'll see open league structures around the world.
Yep.
Albeit a couple of closed league structures, I think. Now,
and this is talking about team sports and league structure. This isn't like we're not going to talk about tennis or racing or anything like that.
It's not golf. This is talking about, and something that we'll probably use as a crux for the comparison is probably the MLS, which is a really interesting case analysis on how a global a sport that kind of belongs globally to an open league format has sort of wedged into a closed league format, and therefore has the same mechanisms that like the NFL has. So the important thing to contextualize when we're talking about these two systems is a competitive balance.
Yes.
Now, my favorite sports economist writer is Stephen Szymanski, and he says
which of course you have a favorite sports economist.
He's
writer.
Brilliant. Yeah, I've got. We're going to talk about
Nerd.
We're going to talk about Sloan. This was my absolute bread and butter during my masters. I'll just give you my dissertation if you want. So competitive balance refers to the rational expectation from fans about who will be the winners of any sporting event. Effectively, this affirms that competitive balance is the an essential feature of attractive team sports, wherein you don't want to know who's going to win the league or a game before you watch. Because if we knew that Brighton were going to beat West Ham on Saturday, we wouldn't have enjoyed it as much.
Right.
No one's gonna, be super upset when West Ham score their second. Similarly, if you're a fan of a team that are doing really, really well, and then you find out at the beginning of the league, at the beginning of the season, that you're not going to win, you're not going to watch.
Right.
And you've got to watch. There needs to be a suspension of knowing what the outcome's going to be.
Perfect example. I have done a terrible job of following my favorite team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, this year. And a lot of that is because I have known for the past several years, but I knew it right when the offseason started, that the Pirates are not going to compete this year. So there's no intrigue to watch.
So we're actually gonna tie deeply onto that sentiment in a minute, because the most obvious difference between British and American models of sport is that in British leagues we tend to have promotion and relegation, which obviously you do not have in the major leagues in the US.
Asterisk. We'll get to that later.
Asterisk. We will get to that later. Yes.
But for the most part, what Harry said is
the NFL,
exactly right.
If you live in Raleigh, North Carolina, your local football team cannot play in the NFL unless something very, very specific happens, which we will touch on. However, if you're a fan of Truro, where we were a couple of days ago, believe it or not, the leagues are all open to teams that do well enough so that they can move up and down through the leagues in what is league competitive balance. If you are too good for the league that you're in, you get rewarded by being in a league where you're probably better positioned. And so every year, and we're going to use football really as the comparison case, because it's happening at the moment. We're at the tail end of the season.
Football, soccer. Yep.
And it's probably the most universal.
Yep.
And also at the moment there are a lot of eyeballs on teams like Wrexham, who were at the beginning of the documentary, when they were first taken over by the two Hollywood boys, they were outside of the Football League in the 5th tier, and they keep moving up.
Yeah.
And it just shows that fluidity and that mobility through the leagues based on your competitive balance. So
and that's actually something that I'm going to want to touch on later. I don't know if that's maybe we have time for it later in this. Maybe it's a full episode or a segment or something later down the line. But one of the things that I think Americans think about with promotion relegation, because I think we're all, if you're a sports fan in America, you understand that concept. You understand that's the fundamental difference. But what can get a little bit, if you're a big sports fan in America, you might not fully get, and I certainly didn't until I started following it more closely, is why does a team not like Wrexham, or maybe that's a bad example because of how well funded they are now, but why is a team that's going up not just rocketing up? Why is that such a slog?
That's a really good question. It's going to come down to, unfortunately, money talks.
For sure.
In both of these, one of the few consistent things between the US and the British system is that the team with the highest wage bill does better.
Sure.
However, one of these systems has a mechanism that limits wage spending, which is an example of artificial competitive balance. Now, as I was saying, promotion and relegation mediates the best teams in England generally will reach the Premier League, where the rest of the best teams are, and that the best team in England right now are probably one of the top 3 teams, and probably Liverpool have just won the league.
Yep.
Liverpool are probably the best team in the league. And the thing is, we're all gonna consider Liverpool the best team in England for the next couple of months, because firstly, they've just won the Premier League, and secondly, until the end of next season, we won't know if anyone's really usurped them.
Right.
So that is how competitive balance is really mediated in the UK. In the US, if you are the worst team in the NFL, which we will use as our comparison case, if you are, I hate to drag you, the Tennessee Titans, and you have not won, you're not in the postseason, and your chances of getting to the Super Bowl are low, you don't get relegated.
Yep.
You just sit still for a little bit longer than
out.
everybody else. You wait until the middle of April when you get to talk about the draft, and then you go again next year.
Your fans are just miserable. That's it.
Your fans are kind of miserable. Your fans now misery is not an emotion that we really want in team sports. What we have in the UK, if you're at the bottom of the league, is you have anxiety.
Yeah.
Which is as compelling a reason to go and watch a game as anticipation of winning the title.
Yep.
It's really fascinating. If your team is, a relegation threatened team, typically attendances are higher because you want to get behind the team to avoid relegation. And if you avoid relegation, firstly, huge economic reward for staying in your league, because dropping down, unfortunately, as we're going to discuss, has big economic sort of penalties for relegation. But also, the relief, avoiding relegation is often celebrated as much as, winning a title.
Yeah.
Because, again, by the very nature of the football pyramid going up and down, you want to keep proving that your team is worthy of being in that upper tier.
And crucially, that celebration is happening because of a win. It's not happening where sometimes you'll see teams will clinch like the best lottery odds for a draft lottery, which, if you're unfamiliar with that, instead of just determining the order of a draft by worst record goes first, next worst goes second, and so on, they'll kind of give better odds at getting the first pick, literally pick the, who gets that first pick out of a randomizer. Yeah.
We need to put a pin in that.
Okay.
Because in 45 seconds, I'm going to point to you and I want you to explain that again.
Okay, great.
Because in the American sports model, you have artificial competitive balance measures.
Yes.
And that is to say, the Titans were the worst team this year. In order to make sure that the league continues to improve as a whole, the NFL continues to have a good spread of talent across the whole league so that games are competitive. And here's the thing, if you're the Titans, you're miserable now, but at the beginning of next season, you can win the Super Bowl. You're in the no. Like, hold on. You are in the right league to win the Super Bowl.
Oh, yes.
Plymouth can't win the Premier League.
They could pull a Leicester and
they could.
Yes.
Yeah, and hey, Leicester's a great example.
Yeah.
But they are already in the league that you need to be in to win. So if they pulled a Leicester and they just defied all the odds, they could make it to the Super Bowl. There's nothing stopping them.
Yes, structure.
Plymouth, who have just been relegated out of the Championship, can't win the Premier League because they're not even going to be in that league next year to begin with.
Right.
So how do we artificially promote competitive balance between the team that were worst this year and the team that won the Super Bowl, who I got wrong when we talked about it in the 6th episode? It was the Eagles. It wasn't the Chiefs.
No,
there's some good housekeeping 6 months later. So how do we make sure that the Titans get a little bit closer to the Eagles? Well, in a perfect world, which is how we're going to discuss this, because there are flaws in all of these.
We're going to start here with Utopia, and then we'll get to how these things actually work.
In a perfect world, we're going to give the Tennessee Titans the first choice to pick from any of the draft declared players coming up from college football. And every year there are a couple of amazing players that we've talked about here and on the TikTok who can, like, if you are in need of a good quarterback, guess what? There's a really good quarterback going for a team that won a bowl. They can come in and improve your team. You can get that running back. You don't have to trade for them with the rest of the league. And hey, if I want who's the Eagles quarterback?
Jalen Hurts.
If I want Jalen Hurts, thank you, William. If I want Jalen Hurts and I'm Tennessee Titans, I've got to put together an unbelievable package to drag him kicking and screaming out of Pennsylvania. That's just not going to happen. But what I can have is the best young quarterback. So that is a way of improving.
And to further on that, to contrast that, there's Manchester City, let's go with Liverpool because they've just won. Liverpool won't be able to get that best player, that best young player, just because they have all the resources. In theory, the top team you would expect, the team with the most money. Them to be able to go out. They would already have Cam Ward, who went number 1 in the draft, that quarterback. They would have access to him versus Burnley, I guess, who would going up this year.
Good pick. Yeah. So the draft is one of these artificial competitive balance mechanisms.
Yeah.
Another one, as we mentioned earlier, there is a salary cap. You can only spend a certain amount of money. Patrick Mahomes his contract's probably huge.
Yep.
If there's a salary cap, and the salary cap is $100 million, and Mahomes' contract is worth $90 million that year. Hey, you've only got $10 million to fill the rest of your team. You've got to fill them with like us.
Yeah.
Like, and Adam's not very good at football. So the salary cap's another way of like keeping some sort of competitive balance, because what we see in the Premier League, unfortunately, the Premier League, the prize money gives all the money to Manchester City or to Liverpool, who next season or this summer will go and sign a player to make them even better.
Yep.
Pushing that goal for a little bit. And there's also, which is uncommon in the Premier League right now, and in the Football League right now, is revenue sharing. The NFL teams share gate receipts.
Yep.
Between the teams, and they all go in a pot, and it's all separated. Like, the wealth stays within the NFL.
Television money.
That's
the biggest.
Split. It's split
that's the biggest
pretty equally.
Yep.
Obviously, you get like regional packages, but that's a different.
That's other sports, but other sports will have that. But and there's proportionality by how often your team is on national television for sure. But that revenue is not just going into one to one team.
So whenever we talk about, in past episodes and future episodes, whenever we talk about college football, you have to realize, we're not talking about, UNC or Auburn or Texas as like teams who are competing in the NFL, but these are teams full of players who are going to move up and dominate in the NFL next year after they're drafted through this mechanism. So what's really interesting is the football pyramid is a fully encompassing Premier League to grassroots pipeline that we always like idealize, but also like in the NFL is the NFL and then college sport, and college sports then rolls down into high school sports.
Yep.
That's why you can watch high school sports on TV in the US. If there was secondary school sport on TV in the UK, it's on the news because someone has done something weird.
Yeah,
it's not televised.
Yeah.
One of the craziest. This is completely beside the point, but one of the biggest head spinning moments I had in your company about youth sports is when me and your father walked into a bar in Carolina, and there were kids playing international baseball on the TV.
Yes.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, why aren't they in school?
A Little League World Series. Well, it's during the summer.
It was during August. Yeah, no bad parenting going on.
I need to go on a quick tangent of my own, and then I want to focus a couple of things here and nail down a couple of things.
We're going to come back and take that pin out, and you're going to tell me.
Yes. So first of all, in an example that you used there, because I was, not by you, to be fair, yesterday by some of your friends, I was made fun of a little bit for how I pronounce your word for eggplant, which is aubergine, and apparently I say that in too British of a way.
I know this guy.
Auburn. It is Auburn.
Auburn.
And
I said Auburn.
You said Auburn.
Yeah, that's fine, and I'll continue to do
so
that.
We're gonna work on getting you more. More of that southern.
I think we do.
I think
we do
twang.
pretty good, but no.
Yeah.
Auburn's going to stay.
Okay. All right. Well, fair. But anyway, I just needed to say that. But anyway, so we've talked a little bit about the promotion relegation system. I think a good term that we've talked about before off camera has been just the use of franchises rather than the franchise system for teams. And I do want to kind of talk about that from the American side as well, about how, for that system, and stop me if you have plans to get to this, because I'm sure you do.
It's on here, but yeah, go on.
But on the flip side, if you're an American team owner or an American fan, you don't you use that term anxiety.
Sure.
Titans fans are miserable, but they're not worried that their team is going to lose a bunch of financial resources and potentially eventually go bankrupt because of their losing.
The chairman or the owner of the Titans got richer despite being the worst team in the league.
Yeah.
The Southampton just got relegated with almost a record low points. Their owner will get poorer.
Yeah.
That team will not have the same finances as if they stayed in the Premier League and they had the Premier League television money. So to take your coin, I'm going to flip it straight back at you. How do I make another team in the NFL? If I'm Plymouth and I got promoted, I stayed up this year and I got promoted next year, boom, Plymouth are in the Premier League. Well, that's wicked. In the US, Raleigh cannot join the NFL unless...
So when the Pittsburgh Steelers and the San Francisco 49ers love each other very much. When they so first of all, Raleigh is
the 40
a little bit of
Steelers.
There you go. There's a little bit of a weird example because like Raleigh doesn't have a professional football team that would play at a level anywhere near the NFL. I don't even think even a semi-pro team. I don't even think there is that kind of thing. There really isn't that kind of thing really throughout.
I'm going to need you to stretch that imagination.
What I'm going to do is I'll give you another example. So let's say Birmingham, because there is, as of the past few years, there is another league called the USL, the UFL, the United Football League, that is kind of it's a summer league, it's a summer football league. So let's use that as an example. Birmingham, we'll get to. We don't have time for that right now, but we will get to it eventually. So Birmingham has a team, and how they, if for some reason the NFL wanted to add Birmingham as a franchise, the owners would come to a vote and say, okay, we want to grant an owner that has presumably put forth money and set in a stadium, we want to grant them the 33rd franchise in the NFL.
Sure.
They would set a fee, an expansion fee that owner would then have to pay to offset because we've talked about those shared finances, those shared revenue streams. Those they're gonna adding another team dilutes that revenue pile. So they're gonna get that. They're gonna get that money back.
Yeah, it is a cartel.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
it's fascinating.
There's literal U.S. law that is written for Major League Baseball, and I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I only know it for MLB, but I'm sure it is applicable to the other leagues that allows them to operate that way. Antitrust legislation.
Szymanski says in a different book, like the interesting thing to recognize early doors, the USA is the world's most capitalist nation, and its sports model is hyper commercialized, but wealth is shared in a quasi socialist model.
Yeah,
in franchise sports. It's fascinating.
It really is,
because there's so much money going in, and it's going to the same 32 people.
Yeah, I mean,
obviously that's a simplified.
Well, yes, but like a term that is often thrown around in U.S. politics is that we have a system of like socialism for the rich. Like there's a lot of practices that like just for government policies, and this obviously we're not getting into merits of things, but like there's a lot of policies that kind of serve wealthy interests in both of our countries. But anyway, it's a similar dynamic. You're exactly right. So to add a franchise, that's to get another franchise into the NFL, it has to be approved by the owners, and it has to, there's going to be a price associated with it. Nobody from the winner from the UFL is not has no expectation of ever sniffing the league.
So, yeah, precisely. And what we've done there is we've identified and we've outlined this, as you said, like this utopia version of both of these systems. Now it is necessary to talk about how both of them actually manifest flawed systems in completely different ways. So the first one there is there are, and again, we're going to continue to use the NFL as an example, there are 32 teams in the NFL.
Yep.
There are There are 18 states in the US. Even if there was one team per state, there would be 18 states that just aren't represented by a professional football team at the highest level.
Yeah.
In every town in England, there is a club that has, through the mechanism of the open league format, can get to the Premier League.
Yeah. Truro FC.
Leicester bouncing around sort of the second and third division or third flight, and then went up and won the Premier League. It's going to happen very, very rarely. It's probably never going to happen again, but it can. Brighton, we got promoted, and now we've been in the Premier League for 7 or 8 seasons. It's fantastic. But if I am a massive sports fan in North Dakota, I've got to pick the nearest team, which are probably the Vikings or the Broncos. If my U.S. geography is as strong as I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. Or bizarrely, and here's the thing: when you have a limited number of sports franchises, they are immediately drawn to markets that are most fertile, which is why you have 4 teams in California.
Yeah.
The 49ers, the Raiders, the Rams. What are the Chargers?
Yes, good job.
Right, okay. But 2 of them are in LA.
Yeah.
You've got the Jets and the Giants in New York.
Yeah.
Hey, New York, just have one team and let Alabama.
Yeah.
Like it's like the 6th most populous state doesn't have, and obviously you have the Crimson Tide. That's right.
Yes, the Crimson.
Right, which everyone in Alabama gets behind because they don't have.
Yeah.
Because it's not only because they don't have a professional team to get behind.
Yeah.
But and that's nice that collegiate football can support that.
Yeah.
But my point is, teams in America move.
Yeah.
And hey, if you are the fan of the St. Louis Rams, and one day there isn't a St. Louis Rams anymore, do you follow them from LA? Do you your club is torn away from you?
Follow them from Auburn.
You follow them
from
St.
Auburn. Louis from Auburn.
Lewis. But now I have to support the team that were our closest rivals if I want to be a fan of my local team.
I mean, you'll find a lot of there's a lot of you'll find a lot of pockets of fans in weird spots, and a lot of that is because franchises have moved. You'll also find a lot of people, a lot of pockets of haters in like people who hate on a team because their franchise was ripped away from them.
Yeah.
And the way that kind of thing often manifests, like obviously in Alabama, North Dakota, that has actually it might not make a lot of sense outside in the current system, but as we talked about in the college football episode, there's different divisions of college football. North Dakota actually has very thriving college football at a lower level. No, and I'm not saying you are, but I'm just saying that kind of thing will manifest in those people paying more attention to the college system. Yeah. But to your point, they're playing a different game.
They come with the Super Bowl.
Right, exactly. So I mean, and another thing that you have is those teams could also in theory win other competitions. And outside of the NBA Cup that's been created over the past couple of years for the NBA, there's really only one trophy to win in each major North American professional sport, and that's also to say nothing of I don't know. The NBA Cup is it's another competition, but it's trying to emulate something that is common throughout Europe. And I think it does a great job, but it's still different. But anyway, point is, those smaller clubs, the UFL could, if you're a UFL team, you can win the UFL championship, but you can't win. There's no world in which any of these people could be on the same playing field.
Yeah, exactly. Now to keep this moving forward, the draft, you were going to mention a merit-based drafting system.
Yes.
Because the draft has been abused.
Yeah.
Most notably by the 76ers.
The 76ers had a big...
tanked multiple seasons to get multiple early draft picks.
Yes.
If you tank in the Premier League, you are rewarded by not playing.
You're rewarded by losing everything.
So really quickly, January 30 seconds, tell me about, is it the MLB merit draft?
So couple of things. I want to touch on one. No,
everything.
I want to touch on one thing. So the 76ers, I will say, the 76ers had a very infamous kind of period of tanking. They called their previous owner or GM called it the process, like trust the process. That was the whole thing. We're going to be bad for a while, but then we're going to be great. Other teams have done that. They just don't publicize it as much as they're going to. And
but that's the opposite of what sports supposed to be.
Again, no, but I'm just saying, we're throwing the 76ers under the bus for that. A lot of people did, rightfully so, but like they're not the only offender. So I mean, it's all relatively the same. The worse your record is, the better draft pick you're supposed to have to stop teams from just straight up tanking. And actually, this was in place when the 76ers are doing what they're doing. So it's, not foolproof at all. But a lot of leagues outside, although baseball just implemented this, I think actually the NFL might be the only league that doesn't do the only major men's professional league that doesn't do this, have a draft lottery system where your finishing order in reverse doesn't determine your actual draft position. It determines your odds of winning the lottery.
Yeah, sure.
And so I mean, it tries to keep teams from actively just like trying to do their worst.
Sure.
But to answer your question.
So those are a couple of reasons why the American closed league format kind of has like some real drawbacks, some real like limitations. Yeah. And of course, as a European, as an English, I'm predisposed to have this superiority complex. And we can finish the episode here and say that there's absolutely nothing wrong.
No,
with
not
the
at all.
Colossal wealth gap between the Premier League and the rest of the English football pyramid.
Yes.
And what is unfortunately an inevitability, which is something akin to the Super League, which we dodged 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Like, don't want it. Like, the Champions League is good enough. And then actually the Champions League changed format to like counteract it. But the Super League was proposed a couple of years ago. It will happen, unfortunately. Just enough of the decision makers who are going to get very rich from it are just like biding their time until it's like, the fans will swallow it. But it is going to be a mostly closed competition. And hopefully we get, if it goes ahead, we get something that is open competition. But that very first, there was so much outburst against the Super League because it was going to be a closed competition where teams that did not merit being there were going to be involved because they were the biggest teams with the biggest revenues, with the biggest like international branding.
Can you broadly explain what the Super League is?
The Super League was going to be a breakaway, I think initially a breakaway from the UEFA Champions League and from domestic leagues. I think the original proposal was that they would play side by side, but actually what was realistically going to happen was that they would leave the Premier League. The traditional top six in the Premier League are considerably richer, or were at the time considerably richer than the other 14 in the Premier League. That's a little bit different now that we have new owners in Newcastle.
So we're talking those English teams, those top English teams, top teams from Germany, Italy, Spain.
Italy, Spain, Real Madrid,
not German,
Real Madrid
not
and
Germany.
Juventus and a couple of English teams really pushed hard to break away.
Yeah.
Bayern Munich, and we have friends in Munich who are not Bayern Munich fans, and to them we do not want to give them any more props than they are due. Bayern Munich, to their credit, said no. Which is wicked, but these teams propose that they break away from their leagues. The Champions League, they have a closed league where just the whole year they just play each other around Europe. Bad for the environment as well. Like, there's another reason that we don't want to do it. There's no promotion or relegation, or if there is, it's very limited. Maybe one team are invited to play every year. Absurd.
If you're American, think of and you're having any trouble following that, think of the college sports realignment and the talks of super conferences where you would have Oregon, Alabama, you'd have the best of the Big Ten, the best of the SEC come together. So think about it that way.
Absolutely no idea what Adam just said, so thank you, because I absolutely no idea. That was French.
You need to go back and watch you need to go back and watch episode 3.
Some of our viewers in watching episode 3. So the Super League was proposed. The Super League's gone away. It will come back. Unfortunately, before it comes back, the Premier League might as well just turn into it, because for the second season in a row, all 3 teams that were promoted to the Premier League this season have all gone back down, which is starting to indicate the gulf in unfortunately, we're talking about player wages are the biggest differentiator between success and not. The biggest difference in wealth between championship teams and the Premier League is now it's too big. It's too big a gulf. You can't jump from the championship into the Prem unless you take advantage of a couple of like small revenue sharing mechanisms like financial fair play or the parachute payments, which have been rolled out and have like mixed success.
Which are... should we explain those? Briefly?
We'll do this quickly. In 2008, I think there was a team that was relegated from the Premier League and immediately went into administration in Portsmouth.
Which is basically bankruptcy.
Yes.
Basically Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
I swear to God, I'm not going to do bankruptcy here. We will launch a sports economics podcast and we'll talk about bankruptcy there. Portsmouth were paying too much on their wages and they went down and suddenly they weren't, let's use them as an example. This isn't exactly what happened, but teams that get relegated don't earn enough money from the league that they're now in to pay the wages of the players who got them relegated. Yep. So number one, the players aren't good enough to be in the Premier League, but you're paying them like they are.
Yep.
So unless you have enough money in the bank to pay them all for a year and you are absolutely sure that you're going to go up, your team's in real economic trouble.
Right.
So what the parachute payments are is we take a little bit of revenue from the Premier League and we give it to the sort of counterintuitively, we give it to the bottom three teams to be like, hey, don't go bust while you get relegated. That would be bad. We don't want another embarrassment like Portsmouth, who eventually had to be bought out by their fans, which is an amazing story, which we will save for an episode long past 100. And then not to be mean to Portsmouth, but it's a very niche thing. Don't worry.
Fair.
So the parachute payments go to teams that have been relegated, so that they can somewhat sustain paying their wages, which is the biggest cost of all sports, I'm sure.
Yep.
All sports teams. Always. However, what that means is you are rewarding the team that are relegated into your league by giving them more resources to then improve and go straight back up again. So again, the two teams that have already secured promotion to the Premier League are Leeds and Burnley. They have both been in the Premier League as recently as the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
So they are like this perpetuation of wealth in the Premier League means that, number one, even with the huge financial reward of getting to the Premier League, teams are not doing a good job at staying up. Poor Ipswich had a really good go of it. Leicester got relegated. They won the Premier League less than a decade ago. These teams, the gulf in wealth is now so big that teams can't come up and stay up, which as a Brighton fan makes me incredibly grateful that we did, because hey, if that door is closed, if the Premier League is effectively going to become a closed system, all in everything except by name, then you
lose any chance of competing at the highest level.
The system is flawed. The system is broken.
Right.
Now the Premier League could do more to make sure that wealth is shared, but after the 90s, the Premier League split from the Football League and is under no obligation to give more money. They normally do, and they gave a lot during COVID. The Football League sits on top of a pyramid, and the pyramid itself could break.
Yeah. And that's something.
But the Premier League don't care.
Yeah.
Because people will still watch it because it's still the best players in the world who are paid the most, who, this year had, 3 teams in the Champions League quarterfinal?
Yeah.
It's a shame.
But that's something I want to drill down into, and then kind of give another example kind of from the American system to balance that out. So I think a key thing here that in my understanding of all this that has been helpful is that, because I think of, the Super League has so much pushback against it, and that fans obviously literally revolted against it, and you wonder why that's such a visceral reaction, and it's because it's literally embedded in your culture that everybody is going to have a chance to play for the same thing,
which is a really American mindset. Hey, you can, if you work hard, you can make it big in America. It's literally the American dream. And yet when we talk about sport, again, we're ignoring the nuances of, colleges paying players and giving them like full rides through college. We're literally talking about our local team, William, what's our local team called? Tooting or Balham?
Over here?
Yeah.
Tooting and Mitcham.
Tooting and Mitcham could win the Premier League. There is nothing stopping them. No legislation, nothing getting in their way.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, you know, in that utopic version we were talking about, there is nothing getting in their way. Yep. What they actually need is Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney to come in, to give them something like 8 digits have been pumped into Wrexham. They're building like parts of their stadium. They're buying good players.
Of the wandering eye of Sauron finding you. You need like
and that you
need to get lucky.
Every team in the Football League and below are crying out for a benevolent billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them exist, and some of them, few of them, are good people.
Yeah.
We will talk on the Athlantic Economics podcast about whether or not any billionaires can actually be truly good people. But hey, if you want to give us money to prove that,
if you want to make us
we'll
billionaires.
But yeah, a benevolent billionaire can come in and save your club.
Right.
Buy your club, take you up through the leagues, like we've seen with Wrexham. And if you want to know more about that, watch their documentary. It's brilliantly made, unfortunately, and paid for by Disney.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the House of Mouse has got its fingers on the championship now.
You are. So I can see
Clip that was good.
There you go. This is a perfect example of like, I mean, you're in this conversation, like getting exacerbated by, and like understandably, I would be too.
Sweating.
I would be too. And like, I think one of the things that it was tough for me to understand after a while is like, okay, this is all, why is this happening? Why is this so big, such a problem in England specifically? I only pay attention to, in terms of football over here, I only really pay attention to a very small club in Munich that is, you rarely get any attention on here, 1860, because there's just not much available in America of them. That and the Premier League and relatively what's happened. I try to keep up with the rest of the FA. What with the football leagues? What
weirdly you've answered the question.
Well, that's what I'm about to say. Is like what separates that? Why is this? Maybe is there an issue like this in Germany and in France and in Spain? Is it? Why does it seem like England has this problem? Is it because potentially the Premier League might not be truly part of the pyramid, like the part of the same system as the lower level clubs?
Great question, as always. We'll rattle through them quickly. I don't really know about France. Germany, no. Germany have an amazing ownership structure called the 50+1 rule that makes economic equality easier. Not perfect. Bayern Munich are the richest team in Germany by like a factor of many, many, many. And the next biggest is Borussia Dortmund. And the difference between those two is so big that it's rare that somebody else other than Bayern Munich, like actually Bayer Leverkusen last year, won the league against... It's not a Leicester, but like no one was.
No one was.
They're one of the more competitive teams in that league, but no one was really expecting.
It'd be like Spurs winning.
Yeah, basically, Leverkusen can win. Leverkusen can win because Bayern Munich didn't.
Yeah,
and that sucks.
Yeah.
Liverpool won this year because Man City didn't. Man City is still probably the best team in the league, but nobody wants to say that. That's fine. Spain is a really interesting one because another thing about the American system that has bled into the European or the British system is something called collective bargaining agreements.
Really?
In Spain, the Real Madrid and Barcelona have had an absolute stranglehold on La Liga for decades. Right. Valencia and Atletico Madrid have both had opportunities and have won and had a certain amount of success, but over and over and over again, it is Real Madrid who are owned by not a benevolent billionaire, but you know, there is huge money in Real Madrid, and also historically they were like the royal team, they were the king's team. Like read between the lines there. Also, Barcelona are owned by Sochis. They are a fan-owned club. Those are both interesting, and we will talk about Barcelona and Real Madrid because I find them absolutely fascinating.
Sure.
But they were completely, until quite recently, and I want to say like 2017, but I'll put the actual date in the show notes. Until recently, they were responsible for negotiating their own TV agreements, separate from the rest of the league. So if you're Levante...
Wow.
Which is the second team in Valencia, you are getting a tiny amount because basically you're getting paid for however many games you're on TV
You're
for,
playing.
and kind of you're leveraging that against a number of people that are going to watch you, which is basically, maybe your stadium times 2.
Sure.
For a general rule for how many
Sure,
fans, and then maybe some around the world which you wouldn't actually get. Whereas Barcelona and Real Madrid were like, we're on TV every game.
Yeah, so they should be getting something different.
Exactly.
And it's so. One thing I love about talking to you is that I always learn something different.
Sure.
And I think that's the great thing about just asking people questions.
Yeah, we
in
hope you
general.
learned something.
Yeah, hopefully you learned something. But because the biggest thing that it sounds like to me is none of those leagues, to our knowledge, have the nuclear option that the Premier League has, because the Premier League is a separate body from the organization that controls the leagues below it.
Sure.
The Premier League, the idea of parachute payments, they're doing that. I'm sure there's something more than the goodness of their own hearts, but if the Premier League wanted to, they could make it so that they're giving more of that revenue down to the lower leagues. I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying they could.
I'm saying they should.
If they wanted to. Sure.
Yeah.
Say that, sure.
Uh-huh.
I'm not, but they could is the thing. But they have the option if at any point that they could just leave. They could break off and make their own thing.
Now, there will be nuances that I don't even understand about why the Premier League, like the hurdles that the Premier League would have to go to do that, because I don't think it's likely.
Yeah.
But also, it doesn't need to be likely because it's kind of already happening.
Yeah.
The Premier League continues to get richer and richer. The gulf between the Premier League and the rest of the English football pyramid continues to grow. What's a real concern, and this is one of the things that was fueling the Super League, is the gulf between the Premier League and the rest of Europe is massive.
Sure.
Really, if we're talking about wage spend compared to wage spend as a metric for gauging on-field success, Premier League teams should be winning the Champions League 3 out of 4 times. Now, Real Madrid is a massive
Just because of revenue.
because they make the most and they pay the most.
Yeah.
And the only outliers are the Real Madrids, the Bayern Munichs, the Barcelonas, who are just huge teams. The thing is
PSG.
PSG's a really good one. PSG's a really fascinating one who spent a lot of money on Messi and Neymar, and then have actually scrapped that and gone back to building a more.
Yeah,
that's a completely different conversation.
Yeah.
But really, Premier League teams should dominate because the Premier League is so much richer than the other leagues, and Barcelona and Real Madrid were oh my God, we're getting left behind. We're not even in England and we're getting left behind by the Premier League.
Yeah.
When we talked about the utopia of how these different leagues are run, the reality is they both have flaws.
They do. And the other side of it, I don't want to get past, it's not just so much, because we've talked about how important there's so many different teams and so many different communities and so many different small places. A lot of those teams are very important to their communities, as we see in shows that are very popular in the U.S., like Welcome to Wrexham, Sunderland Till I Die, those kind of things. The reason that that's so popular is because I think that resonates with Americans, because it's they're shows that show that community and show how it almost awakens a sense of nobility in sport for Americans. And so all of this isn't just, oh man, Wrexham and Sunderland, these teams don't have as much of an opportunity to win. It's that they don't have an opportunity to, it's a lot harder for them to survive. There's no guarantee that they won't go bankrupt, that they won't completely lose their team. So when we're talking about, hey, the Premier League, this wealth gap, it's not just man, they're not going to be able to realize this tiny 0.5% dream. It's that they might just go under altogether.
So 2 things about Wrexham. Number 1, you're so completely correct. The Welcome to Wrexham show is so much more popular in the US than it is in the UK.
Yeah.
One of their shirt sponsors is United Airlines, which you cannot fly from Wales or the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
unless like you're specifically going to America, and even then, I think
Wales or England or Scotland.
True, yeah.
Wow,
United Kingdom.
Wow, you heard it here
Scotland,
first. Here,
and we didn't even
Harry
mention Northern Ireland.
doesn't consider Wales part of the UK.
And then the other thing is, what we are going to see a whole spate of wonderful sports journalists writing consistently about the efficiency and the sustainability of the Wrexham project, because the Hollywood boys spent a lot of money to get them into League Two, and then that success actually rolled. I think when they got promoted into League Two, they were already good enough to be in League One.
Sure.
So they absolutely steamrolled League Two, and then I can't remember if they actually won League Two, but whatever. They blasted through League Two. Normally, teams that are promoted from the National League or the Vanarama National League, they struggle. Not Wrexham. And then they went to League One and they haven't struggled. But the amount that Rob and Ryan are going to have to spend, I don't know, it's not just them. The amount that they're going to have to spend, is Mickey Mouse as well. The amount that they're going to have to spend is going to have to be exponentially more to even stay in the championship.
Yeah,
and actually, if you are a fan, if you're American and you're a fan of the Wrexham show or not, watch it anyway if you care about what we're talking about, because the season after the one that they've made it about this, so in 2 years' time, there's going to be a really good season showing them how hard it is to stay in the championship.
Yeah.
And I could have egg on my face in 2 years when they blast through and they play in the Premier League.
Yeah.
I am 85% sure that they're going to sign Jamie Vardy, who is a Premier League striker who's just left with Leicester.
Sure.
It's got Wrexham written all over it, but the point is Plymouth, who have just been dumped out, who are basically swapping with Wrexham, don't have that opportunity.
No.
Well, good for Plymouth for becoming our de facto football league team just through the process of this trip and, and this episode.
I will say that it seems like there's nothing. This isn't to say anything bad about Wrexham or what Rob and Ryan are doing, because they seem to be treating this with care, and I'm sure there's people that are following that specific situation a lot more closely than we are, outside of obviously the documentary, outside of the show. But it's just, this is illustrative of how completely how much of an abnormality this is.
Yeah.
So
and I'm going to use that to springboard into my very last point about the close in the Open League, and one of the threats to the Open League format that we have is my biggest fear from the Wrexham project, which we're going to call it, is that it will make attractive an influx of American owners. And we'd be lying if you said Tom Brady, I don't know, maybe Tom Brady doesn't buy Birmingham if he hadn't seen Ryan or Rob do it.
JJ Watt bought at least a
Watt's
huge
got
piece of Burnley. Yeah.
JJ Watt, come on the podcast, obviously. I'm not sure before.
I actually saw him at the Masters.
I'm 100% sure JJ Watt could not point to Burnley on a map more than a year ago.
He was wearing a Burnley hat.
That's pretty cool.
So
Has it got a map on it?
Yeah.
I reckon you could probably point to just about where Burnley is. I've been. It's lovely. It's fine.
So and that's not that I know you're not sitting here saying that Americans are bad, but it's a different style, as we've talked about,
and like
that's not great for this system,
because if everyone in the Premier League was owned by an American and they come to one of their democratic votes, who's to say that? And again, it's not that Americans are inherently greedy. It's just that now that we've had Todd Bowley and we've got an influx of Americans, we are seeing a little bit more sentiment towards more American league things, like the All-Star game that we talked about, episode 6 or whatever. That's cool. Yeah, 100%. Bring that on. That I think would be cool. But hey, what about when they're like, maybe we close out the league with a playoff and the Premier League Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, that would do massive numbers. If you got to the end of the year and Arsenal and Liverpool could face off in the Super Bowl for the Premier League, Arsenal fans would take that because they're like 6 points behind. Yeah. They didn't get there.
What if they close it out, or get rid of the teams that aren't as fun to watch for most people?
Yeah. And then what if they, and again, it's not just about Americans because it's happening in the Super League and they're not typically owned by American owners. But like, I get worried about the amount of ownership from a sports model where it is typically closed coming over and closing what is a halfway closed open system.
The way that you make money, the way that you maximize revenue in American sports traditionally is wildly different.
Yes.
From the motivations of owning a club in the UK.
That's a beautiful, beautiful way of putting what I've been like scrambling to get to. Yes, you're 100%. Yeah. That is exactly the soundbite I want to finish that section.
That was, yeah. I mean, this is something that will be very interesting to watch over time.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I mean, you just kind of hope that everybody kind of has the best interests of these clubs and these communities at their hearts.
Exactly. So moving forward, please use this episode as a reference point for literally everything else we're going to talk about.
Or watch that episode. What is it? The episode of Ted Lasso or Rebecca Waddingham just like goes in on the super. Like it was like a big dagger to the super league. It's really good.
Use this as a reference point. This obviously is 15. We said 9 months ago that we would like to do 2 a month ish.
Yeah.
Obviously 9 times 2 isn't 15, but we're still pretty pleased with like how this is going, and we're not going to stop. So we're going to try our best to do like an in-person episode.
Hopefully at least once a year.
A couple of times a year would be nice.
Yeah.
I think at the end here is a good time to acknowledge and thank people both for like the first 15 episodes where maybe we should have already, and for specifically this one, and then sort of
before we get to that, let's get to that. Before, want to acknowledge a couple of things. So yes, as we've sat here, we've talked about a lot of things like on this trip. We've talked about a lot of things that we want to do going forward. A lot of things that we're hoping to get on a more regular schedule here, a more regular cadence of. So that you can know when to expect new episodes to drop, new content to drop, that kind of thing. We've also, I'd also like to, talk about. I honestly forgot what I was going to say.
The big thing is we're not going to do sport math anymore.
Yes, that was it. Yeah. That was it. Sport math is dead.
It's all right. We had 14 episodes of it, and I wasn't very good.
Harry was just so bad at it.
So when we had a meeting about this like a couple of days ago, I was just sat there crying, being like, I can't be humiliated on the internet that often. We will do some sort of trivia, some sort of competition thing.
There'll be more games to come.
It's not going to be count the number of teams east of Sheffield and times it by the number of times 1860 have won a league. So that's going to go... which is fine. It's okay. It's for the better, and I enjoyed it. But yes,
but we've had a lot of people help us along the way, and we definitely want to acknowledge that.
So from like most obscure to most personal, we want to thank American Airlines and British Airways for getting Adam here.
And for getting you to America when it does happen. We want to thank. We want to thank Dan. We want to thank Harry's roommate Dan. Producer Dan, who will get that cycling episode soon.
And then literally producer William.
Studios, yes,
here at AB facilitating the first ever in-person episode of Athlantic.
This is huge. Elizabeth for being a terrific moral sport and probably our number one fan.
And then Isle Beach go-kart track for setting up,
for making Harry so upset that I had to be here.
It was probably one of the experiences where we were like, we definitely have to talk about the difference between American and UK, because I'm like mad about this. Also, my family across the board, Dad for getting us to the Amex, Alice for my sister for letting us use that car for our road trip, Mum for putting us up.
Yes.
Thank you, all of you honorary producers. And
thank all of you.
Oh God, yeah.
Thank all of you for watching and listening, because if you weren't here, we'd just be sitting here talking to ourselves.
That's true.
Yeah.
Now, whether you say sports
or sport,
thank you for joining us.
This has been Athlantic.
Yeah, also like subscribe. Whatever.
Okay. That's okay.
Fine. This will be our first ever cold close.
Yeah. Cool.
Amazing.
Cool. I think that's a wrap.
Thank you, William.
Thank you, William.